I think maybe we can get started. We have a good crowd. Thank you all for coming. Great to see you all here. My name is Jun Rensla. I'll be trying to moderate us smoothly through this session. Maybe before we get started and dive in, a couple of housekeeping announcements. So some of the conversation will be happening in Japanese, so if you don't know Japanese, make sure you get one of the translation devices. Our team is handing them out at the back if you need one. Great. All right. So thank you for making it here. I know there are about 50 parallel sessions happening right now, so you chose well. You will not regret it. The purpose of this session, so the title, Smart and Risk-Informed Decision Making, is really what we want to talk about here, and we have a great lineup of panelists here, and we'll try to squeeze them as much as possible to hear about their experience. I know that in this room, I don't have to convince anyone about the importance of preparing for disasters, investing in resilience, especially preparedness, ex-ante action. But when we are outside of this room, outside of this conference, making that case can be a bit more difficult. In practice, especially after the COVID pandemic, countries are fiscally constrained. Finance ministers are more hesitant than ever, perhaps, to spend generously, especially when there are competing needs in education, health, social services. So we need to make, as a community, a strong case about why it is so important to invest in preparedness before disasters happen. And the challenge is especially amplified when we think about climate change. There's a lot of uncertainty in the risks that we are dealing with. Partly, some risks are so difficult to predict. Think of earthquakes. When is the next big earthquake going to hit? There's a lot of uncertainty about these questions. Also, when we think about the long term in the context of climate change, how exactly is climate change going to materialize in the long term? What does it mean for the patterns of risks? And then how does that translate into the investment needs when we're talking about disaster risk management? And as a consequence, even though as a community we've advocated so much for preparedness and ex-ante action, we're still guided very much by disasters. When they occur, governments respond, and that drives our actions still. So in this session, given these challenges, we have uncertainty, unlimited needs when it comes to preparedness, but limited resources. Where do you start as a policymaker? How do you identify and prioritize the most urgent actions? How do you estimate the costs that are needed for the investments that are needed? How do you raise the financing to implement those actions? And generally, how do you make the case for disaster preparedness? And how do you form an alliance of action? So the context to this session is a three-part report that we've published recently at the World Bank. This was a partnership between the European Commission and the World Bank. It looks specifically at those questions, practical, data-driven tools for decision-making, smart decision-making for disaster preparedness, robust economic approaches for estimating the costs and investment needs of these interventions, and then finally, how to leverage the risk financing that's necessary to implement these investment needs. And we're lucky today to have a great panel here. You already see the names up here. I don't want to give it away, but we have DRM champions from the European Commission, from the World Bank, but also from government organizations in Romania and Japan. So we want to ask them about their experience, and I really want to keep the session informal. I'll be asking them a couple of questions to get them warmed up, our panelists, but then I count on you to ask some tough, challenging questions to them also. But before we get to that, we wanted to, before I introduce our amazing panelists, I wanted to play a short clip just to set the scene. This is think of it as a trailer for the reports that we published recently. And while you watch the video, maybe already get your phones out because you will need them right after the video. Let's go.
Europe faces overwhelming losses and destruction from climate-related disasters. 2023 was the hottest year on record, with disasters across Europe costing more than 77 billion euros. Unfortunately, the European continent is warming faster than any other region in the world. Is Europe prepared? Its emergency response infrastructure is exposed to hazards like floods, wildfires, earthquakes, and landslides, highlighting potential gaps in readiness to disaster and climate impacts. Given competing priorities and limited funds, how can countries rise to the climate challenge and take actions to protect their communities, infrastructure, and public finances? New research from the World Bank and European Commission offers evidence and tools to help countries prioritize and make smart decisions to boost their disaster and climate resilience. Information is power. Risk data and analytics can help guide smart investments in priority sectors that maximize benefits for society. How to estimate the costs of adapting to climate change, such as adapting entire sectors or public assets like transport networks, and the efficient management of public finances, now stretched by multiple disasters each year. Embracing new tools and approaches can help Europe secure a more sustainable future for generations to come.
All right, that's about the reports. We published them recently. At the back, you can find some infographics on your way out, learn a little bit more about them. I want to hand it over to my colleague, Stefan Zimmermann, who will now hit you with a little surprise quiz. Very hard questions.
Thank you, Jun. Hello, everyone. My name is Stefan Zimmermann, and I'm the Slido guy today in this session. I'll show you now the screen here. We would like you to take out your phones, connect to slido.com, or copy the QR code here, or type this code on the website. If you type it, it's 4 times 94. And you will get to a set of questions that we want to test you now. We want to test your knowledge about climate change and climate change adaptation, and how much attention you have paid to that video that you just saw. The first question you should see on your phone is, which is the fastest warming region on the planet? So that should be an easy one, actually, if you listen to the video. So let's see the answers that are coming in. Okay, overwhelmingly, it looks like Europe. Africa and Asia can't decide. But yes, you paid very good attention to the video. Thank you very much. It's correct. Europe is unfortunately the region that warms the fastest. Next question, it's a bit more tricky for you. Across Europe, what percentage of critical infrastructure, and here we mean fire and police stations, hospitals, and schools, are in areas of high wildfire risk? So pay attention. It's not just any risk, it's wildfire risk. And the answers are between 30 and 60%. And it seems a lot of you have also read the reports already. So the tendency goes towards 40% with half of the respondents. That's very good. The other half, I can only recommend you to take a look at the reports. And the last question that we have today is more on the financial side. What are the estimated annual climate adaptation costs per person in Europe so the EU 27 countries? So again, that's per person per year. What do you think? Is it 34 cents, euro cents, at a minimum up to €1.10 per person per year? Or is it €3.40 up to 11 euros per person per year? Or do you think it's even higher, like 34 euros to 110 euros, or even 340 to 1,100 euros per person? It seems this one doesn't show the result. 1 second. There you go. That we also seem to have like half of the participants think it's between 34 euros and 110 euros per year. Again, same answer. Half of you have read the reports. That's very good. The other half, again, please go back to the report and have a look again. The correct answer here is between 34 on the low side and 110 on the high side per person per year in Europe, in the EU 27. Thank you very much. With that, I hand back to Jun.
Amazing, that was very smooth. I know it's all about AI and all that these days, but we successfully played a YouTube video and conducted an online quiz. So hands up for Stefan. All right, so now we come to the main act. I'll just call up our great panelists one by one. First up, we have State Secretary and Head of the Romanian Department of Emergency Situations at the Ministry of Internal Affairs in Romania, Dr. Raed Arafat. We have the Director of the Disaster Resilient and Environmentally Friendly City Promotion Office of the City of Sendai in Japan, Ms. Satoko Shibuya. We have Deputy Head of the Disaster Prevention Unit at DG ECHO of the European Commission, Gaetano Vivo. And alphabetically last but not least, my colleague, World Bank Senior Disaster Risk Management Specialist and one of the lead authors of the report, Zuzana Stanton-Geddes. All right, so I can see you. So I'll ask a couple of warm-up questions, but please get your questions ready. If you're quick, already raise your hand. You'll get the microphones. We'll take 10, 15 minutes for the first lap, and then I'll hand it over to you all. I want to start with you, Dr. Arafat, if that's okay. So Romania has really become one of the leaders in disaster risk management in the region, and so I was hoping you could you played a key role in making that happen, actually, over the years. So I wanted to ask you to share a couple of examples about what does smart investments in risk reduction and preparedness mean in Romania, and how did you make that happen?
Thank you. So first of all, it's not easy to convince politicians to give money, especially when it comes to disaster preparedness. This is a medium and long-term issue, and usually governments think for the next 4 years until elections come. So it's very hard to convince for things that their results will be seen after years to come. But still, we still have a chance if we persevere and if we insist and if we come with proof, data, and science in front of them and with examples. Now in Romania, we have several things that we have done. One of them that I want to mention and show it was the better preparedness for our firefighters and having them in a safer environment. The idea is that if you want to respond to a disaster, your first responders must be alive during a disaster. So if they are staying in buildings which are going to fall during an earthquake, you can expect that you will not have them. So one of the major projects we had with the World Bank was to select 34 buildings which were in very advanced deterioration state and to either retrofit them or to rebuild them. Another project was with funds from the EU, where we allocated funds to improve the response capacity, but also we are investing in preparing the population. I talked about this today. I'm not going to repeat it. We have several projects where we are investing in the preparedness of the population and teaching the population that they are part of the solution, not part of the problem. But I would like to show the video about what we did in the fire stations, and we have seen in countries that were hit by earthquakes recently that fire stations, if they fall on the firefighters and their engines, then you are losing your response teams, and this costs a lot of lives, their lives and the lives of those whom they could have saved. So if we can show the film, please.
It's a small pause for dramatic effect.
So this is an excellent project to upgrade, rehabilitate, modernize the firefighting infrastructure in Romania by undertaking a seismic retrofit or reconstruction of the major firefighting facilities, modernize them, equip them to modern standards, but also improve their energy efficiency and operational capability.
În cadrul acestui program sunt cuprinse 35 de clădiri aparținând inspectoratelor județene pentru situații de urgență și subunităților de pompieri din structura acestora, care au fost expertizate și încadrate în clasa 1 și 2 de risc seismic. Primele 5 clădiri la care se execută lucrări de construcții sunt detașamentul de pompieri Carei din județul Satu Mare, detașamentul de pompieri Obor din București, detașamentul de pompieri Tecuci. Toate 4 subunități au fost încadrate în clasa 1 de risc seismic și au fost prevăzute lucrări de demolare și realizare de construcții noi. Și a 5-a clădire, sediul Inspectoratului pentru Situații de Urgență al județului Călăraș, la care se realizează lucrări de consolidare, mansardare și refuncționalizare.
I'm extremely pleased to join you today on behalf of the World Bank and our team in marking the official inauguration of this new fire station in Mizil. The World Bank is honored to have contributed to this achievement.
Astăzi asistăm la un pas dintr-un proiect foarte mare, să ne asigurăm că salvatorii noștri vor ajunge la cei care trebuie să fie salvați.
Clădirea avea peste 100 de ani și prezenta un risc seismic. Noua clădire a sediului detașamentului ne aduce beneficiul că orice tehnică de intervenție se poate gara fără probleme în interiorul garajului, ceea ce în vechiul sediu era imposibil. Se pierdeau câteva secunde care pot fi vitale într-o situație de urgență. Clădirea, de exemplu, are câteva elemente de noutate. Unul dintre ele îl reprezintă spațiile pentru persoanele de sex feminin. Avem și toaletă pentru persoane cu dizabilități. Din punct de vedere energetic, avem panouri pentru încălzirea apei pe clădire.
Intervenția noastră este contra cronometru. Dotarea tehnică nouă mă ajută acum să câștig timp. Viața omenească e cea mai de preț. Satisfacția enormă de a salva o viață nu poate fi măsurată material.
Intrați într-o casă nouă, sper întotdeauna să vă întoarceți de la intervenție și mult succes colegilor care vor activa în cadrul acestei stații. So at this moment there are 4 buildings.
This is a moment to celebrate that through efforts resulting in such achievements, Romania is one step closer to becoming a country that is resilient to shocks, including natural disasters. As General Deduc said, we are one team here, and we all will continue to work to the benefit and safety of citizens of Romania.
So as I said, there are already 4 that are finished, and the firefighters are going back to them, and there are others that are going near to being finished, where we will have our firefighters going back to them, and the project will continue. Thank you.
Nice, thank you. I'll come back to that in a minute. I want to move, Ms. Shibuya, everybody here probably knows about the Sendai framework, but maybe fewer people know about what the city of Sendai is doing about managing natural hazards and shocks. Maybe can you start by sharing with us some key initiatives that the city of Sendai has undertaken in recent years to prepare for shocks, and especially considering that Sendai was hit hard by the disaster in 2011. And please get your translation ready.
はい、ありがとうございます。仙台市では、2011年の東日本大震災の経験と、あとは2019年に採択された仙台防災枠組み こちらの枠組みの採択をきっかけとして、市民の皆様にとって、安全安心で快適な街を実現するため、防災環境都市、このまちづくりを目指す都市像に掲げて、ハードソフトの両面からまちづくりを推進しています。で、仙台市は日本では古くから森の都と呼ばれてまして、海も山もある自然が調和した良好な環境がありまして、でこちらに加えまして震災を経験したその教訓を踏まえた高い防災性っていうのを強みにしながら市民の共同で持続可能なまちづくりっていうのを進めています。で、この防災環境都市づくりを進めるにあたりましては、仙台市では基本計画の重点プロジェクトにこの都市像をしっかりと掲げて、あらゆる事業にこの理念が取り入れられるように取り組んでおります。で、少し事例をご紹介しますと、ハード面では気候変動の方も考慮しながら都市インフラの持続可能性を高めていかなければということで、自然の力を生かした備えを進めるということをやっております。具体的には津波被害を受けた市の沿岸部の方で、未来の町や生態系を守るために市民の皆さんと、木を植えてその木を育てながら海岸林を再生するという活動をしています。でまた市内の指定避難所、災害時の避難所となるところに小中学校があります。小中学校ですけれども、そちらにはすべて太陽光発電と蓄電池を組み合わせたシステムを、震災後にしっかりと導入をいたしまして、災害時の電源確保と CO2 排出削減に取り組んでいるところです。あとはソフト面で言いますと、日常生活の中でやはり防災の主流化っていうところをしっかりと進めなければいけないということで、今ですね、仙台防災未来フォーラムというイベントを毎年仙台の方で開催しておりまして、こちらは多様なマルチステークホルダーの皆さんに参加していただいて、皆さんで活動の紹介とか思いを共有する場としてそういったイベントを開催しています。あと津波被害を受けた、震災以降小学校があるんですけれども、そちらを一般に公開しておりまして、震災の経験の伝承っていうところにも取り組んでいるところです。はい、詳しくはこちらにQR つけていただきましたけれども、こちらのホームページでもご紹介しております。はい。
Thank you. Gaetano. So you sit in Brussels, but you interact with civil protection agencies across the EU and even beyond that. So maybe can you start off highlighting some of the key initiatives of the EU and your DG in particular? So what do you do to scale up investments in climate resilience and disaster preparedness?
Yes, thank you and good afternoon. As we know, the past 4 years, the disaster risk landscape of the past 4 years has been dramatically changing in Europe. We had COVID 4 years ago, Russia's war against Ukraine, climate change with extreme events. Just wanted to remember the flash floods that caused more than 250 victims in Germany and Belgium in 2021. Last year, we had the largest wildfire ever recorded in Europe since observation started in northeast Greece, an area bigger than the size of New York City burned. So obviously the risk landscape is changing. What all of these disasters have in common is that, first of all, they cascade through sectors, socioeconomic sectors, and also they cascade through national borders. So obviously there is a role for the EU to help our countries, but, and this is important because I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the EU functioning, but disaster risk management, disaster prevention and preparedness is not a EU competence. It's a competence that lies with our member states, is their prerogative. What we can do from Brussels is to support and coordinate their work in disaster prevention and preparedness and response upon their request. And of course, we are trying to encourage this request because we see that the needs are, as I try to explain, very big. How are we helping our member states? Along three main sort of axes. The first one is policy. So what you see on the screen are the disaster resilience goals, the European disaster resilience goals, which we adopted a little more than a year ago. These are the 5 key areas where we need to, meaning EU and member states, need to do more in terms of investments, in terms of policies, in terms of plans, to become all more resilient in Europe. And it may seem a small thing, but I can assure you that, and probably Dr. Arafat more than me, can assure you that agreeing on this common framework across 27 member states and also 10 other countries which are our participating states, so we have a total of 37 countries, has not been a small undertaking. So the policy framework that we have now points us to the 5 key areas where we need to invest and do more policy to become resilient. So that's policy. In terms of knowledge, you hinted at that, June, in your introduction. The main point, the main need that we had and was about changing the narrative around prevention. Dr. Arafat, you said that investing in preparedness is difficult, it's not appealing to politicians. Investing in prevention, it's even less appealing because it's typically something that it's difficult to show results for. It's something that is even hard to understand, because technically complex. So the first thing we did there was to partner with the World Bank 4 years ago to work on the first phase of the economics for prevention and preparedness, which provided us with some Europe-specific data on this evidence, on why it makes sense. Because there were lots of data on cost-benefit ratio flying around, US, Japan, but we needed Europe-specific evidence. And this study was built on nearly 80 real-world case studies, investments. And so we have those numbers. Those numbers were very impressive. They told us that, on average, the benefits are 2 to 10 times the cost for this investment. And the even better news is that some of those investments, the smart investments, for those investments, the benefits materialize regardless of whether a disaster happens or not. And this is what the politicians need to hear. And this is what we are trying to tell them. That those are no regrets choices which will, regardless of whether a disaster happens, make their environment, their society happier and better. And then the third and final axis of our work is on operational support. So we did a survey in 2021. Our counterparts are the civil protection authorities or disaster risk management agencies across Europe. These are, not huge departments, and typically they work to respond to emergency. And as I said, in the past 5 years, we had a lot of those. They're busy running from one emergency to the other. Mobilizing and implementing funding is not in their DNA. And so they needed help. And we try to listen to them by promoting and introducing some instruments on technical assistance. I can give more details later to make this burden lighter on them. One very last point, peer-to-peer advice. This has been working very well because it's often the best way to learn from your peers without having these evaluations or audits from Brussels on topics which are sensitive, because nobody likes exposing their weaknesses or what doesn't work. And we developed, we improved actually a methodology on peer-to-peer assessment for disaster risk management systems, and we developed a new one that focuses only on wildfire risk, which is the most recurrent risk in Europe that we have to deal with on an annual basis. So this is in a nutshell what we're doing, but I'll be happy to talk more about it. Thank you.
Great, thanks. You just mentioned some sensitive challenges. I want to come back to that in a minute. But maybe Susanna, so you're one of the lead authors of these reports. So we saw in the quiz that most people have apparently already read it, but let's suppose there's still 1 or 2 people who haven't read the report. So maybe give us an elevator pitch. So what are from your perspective, from the bank's perspective, what what are the key takeaways from this report? What does it mean for Europe and civil protection agencies in particular?
Thank you very much, and also good afternoon from my end. Indeed, these are the reports. I'm not going to read out now everything. There are lots of key messages, good messages, data, evidence, but I would like to leave you with three. First of all, invest smartly and prioritize specific sectors, specific areas, or specific types of investments. This is in order for you to maximize the benefits for the society, for your communities. Now, Gaetano already said what is a smart investment, so I don't need to repeat it. And you have seen it also in the video from Romania. Smart investments are really those that combine the various sides. They increase your safety, they can combine energy efficiency, you can put climate change adaptation in it, and you have functionality upgrades, so be it for disability or for other types of needs. The good news is there are tools, there is data, and there is evidence to help you make these kind of decisions. Now, the second point is that you need to do these investments fast. You need to do them now, because climate crisis is already upon us. So we already need to be, as we are investing in disaster resilience, we already need to be adapting to what's coming in the short term, but also in the medium and long term. And again, the good news is, while there is a lot of uncertainty, and June stressed this at the beginning, there are also, again, tools, there are examples and ways for you to start thinking through what would be the right combination of measures to go forward that will help you to incrementally, but also eventually transformationally adapt to the climate crisis. And the third message is, don't stop just here, but look also at your financial preparedness, financial readiness. Because if you look at this after disaster, we know it's already too late. So you really need to start identifying your gaps. What is it that you have in your toolbox of financial arrangements? What is your macro fiscal risk from earthquake, from wildfire, from floods, whatever it is that you have in your risk profile? And what is the gap, the potential gap, that you are exposed to because of your contingent liability? What is it that the shock could be also to your populations? So these would be the three key messages. Invest in disaster resilience, do it now, do it quickly, and don't stop there. Also think about financial preparedness.
Great, thanks. Maybe keep your mic ready. So I want to challenge you a little bit. So great to publish reports, but like, what do you do with that now? How do you make sure that the messages and findings from the report actually make a difference in countries? Gaetano was talking about gaps potentially in some of the countries you're working in. So what are you going to do with it, and how will it make a difference?
Okay. Indeed, it's not just about publishing reports, having them on your shelf, but it is about operationalizing these messages. So today is one of the ways we are trying to do it, share the knowledge with different groups. I can also tell you that soon we will have also e-learning available through the World Bank website that you can access. It will be very short and very accessible. But what is important is that we are trying in the ECA region, but this is something that is very applicable also to other regions, through technical assistance, including through technical assistance that is funded by the Commission or that is funded by GFTRR from different donors, including from Japan, to actually implement some of these approaches. These reports that are here, they both start with, or all three start with methodologies, and then include examples that already exist, and you might even recognize yourself in those, but also provide case studies, so kind of step-by-step approach, how you can adopt a prioritized approach, how you can really enhance your thinking on climate change adaptation. So we hope with that we can really positively impact also the portfolio of technical assistance projects and the World Bank's investments. And in fact, if there are TTLs here in task team leaders in this session, and you have a upcoming or you are implementing a grant by GFDRA or others, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, because I'll be very happy to share or direct you to any of the examples or case studies. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Susanna. Maybe I'll just move backwards in that row. So Gaetano, you were just hinting a little bit at challenges. So it's nice and easy to talk about all the success stories, and I'm sure we've heard plenty of that at this conference, which is great, but I want to challenge you to dig a little deeper into what are the challenges that you see across the EU, across maybe Europe at large, in terms of implementing, making sure that the things that we were just talking about actually happen.
Yeah, you're right. It's always much easier to talk about what we do well. So let me go back then to this survey that we did in 2021 about the needs for our disaster risk management agencies in Europe to invest more and better. So what did they lack? Well, three things, and also this has been kind of corroborated by what we have seen in this past 5 years since we introduced our first technical assistance instrument, from the proposals, from the type of project that come in. Three main things out of several. I'm just simplifying. First, the lack of a long-term strategic vision from these agencies when it comes to submitting an idea for an investment. Lack of that, plan that is the long-term and that is really systemic. Typically, we used to more than now, luckily, so it means that this technical system is working, but several small, tiny projects. The disaster loss database, but not, just to build the IT infrastructure of it without connecting it with, the risk assessment methodology in the country so that, this data can feed back into also the anticipatory work, or a study for, a fleet of e-vehicles for civil protection, but without looking at, the implication of, okay, is our power lines, our power network around the emergency operations center resilient, and this kind of thing, a bit fragmented intervention. And this is what we are trying to solve with the study that Susanna just presented, so hopefully that will help. Second one is more about the institutional framework, because we talk a lot about civil protection authority, disaster risk management agencies, whatever you want to call them, but in the end, we are building their case for investing, but it's not them who need to invest. It's others who need to invest. And that is not easy because often there are no institutional framework for having this kind of discussions, or if there are, the challenge is that there's competition between different priorities of other government sectors, or lack of will of investing in something which is not very visible for a politicians who want to take a picture and next to a nice infrastructure or something that is visible. So that is what we are trying to do by connecting within the Commission across our investment programs, because the Commission is a very huge machine, and there are several investment programs in sectors, agriculture, in structural regional funds, environment. So we are trying to help from within by creating a network on prevention that meets regularly and that talks to these programs, try to really look at risk in a multi-sector way, trying to end this silos approach in our investment programs within the EU. So hopefully that will also help to do the same at country level. And then lastly, it's what I was referring to earlier as more like on the human resources and the capacity. Working with EU funds, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that world. It can be quite difficult for an agency which, as I said, does not have this kind of job, this know-how in their DNA. So it takes some time to learn, to abide by the rules of the EU, the grants, and so all of that can be difficult for these agencies, and that's when we introduce this new streamlined technical assistance tool, which is called TAF, Technical Assistance Financing Facility. Yeah, thanks for showing the slide, which is really alleviates a lot the administrative work to the civil protection, and also leverages the expertise, the global expertise of the World Bank. And the interesting thing is that we have seen several requests from member states, also the more advanced member states, one that have a longer tradition in civil protection, which shows that they have the same capacity gaps in terms of resources, but also that they are grappling with issues, with challenges for which an answer is not really available, or is not easily available in Europe, and we have to look beyond Europe, and here is where the experience of the World Bank comes very handy. So I hope I gave you a taste of the challenges we have.
I'll leave it to the audience to dig deeper if they want to. Just a reminder on that, maybe get your questions ready. But first, Shibuya-san, I was looking at the case of Sendai. I was particularly interested in the role of community. So maybe can you describe a little bit more the approaches which you took in Sendai City to engage the community in formulating your solutions, formulating strategies for disaster and disaster resilience and preparedness?
はい、仙台市のそのレジリエンスに関するステークホルダーの巻き込みにつきましては、代表的な事例として、2つご紹介したいと思いますけれども、1つ目は地域における防災減災の中心となっていただく方を増やすために、仙台市地域防災リーダー、通称 SBL と呼んでいますけれども、こちらの養成に取り組んでいます。で、2024年4月現在で約900名の方が市内でこの SBL として活動していらっしゃるんですけれども、この SBL は平常時には地域の特性を考慮して自主防災計画づくりを実施したりですとか、あとはその地域で効果的になる訓練の企画実施っていうところに取り組んでいただいています。で、災害時には避難誘導ですとか救助救援活動を指揮するなど、その地域にとって核となる活動をしていただくようにSBL の方なっていただいています。で、SBL になった後もですね、毎年バックアップ講習っていうのを仙台市の方で実施いたしまして、この SBL の方々の知識や技術の向上にも取り組んでいますし、合わせてその地域間で SBL がそれぞれいらっしゃいますけれども、その方たちの連携っていうところも常に図っているところです。あとは2つ目の事例といたしましては、研究機関や民間事業者の方々との連携というところです。で、こちらにつきましては今ですね、仙台市の方では仙台防災テックというプラットフォームを立ち上げまして、その研究機関民間事業者の方々と連携した取り組みを行っています。で、こちら具体的には防災とテクノロジーとビジネスを掛け合わせていろいろなその防災課題に対して新たな解決策ですとか、あとは新事業を継続的に生み出していけるようにということで運営をしているプラットフォームです。で、こちら、例えばその最近の実証事業ですと、災害情報を伝達する屋外にサイレンなんかありますけれども、こちらの放送の時のアナウンスが、少し聞こえづらい方とかもいらっしゃると思いますので、これを解決するために例えばその音声を、デジタル加工を行ってより聞こえやすい音声にして、既存のそのスピーカーを更新せずに、何かより良いそのアナウンスができないかっていうことを実験をしたりということに取り組んでいます。はい、こういったことが事例として挙げられます。はい、
ありがとうございます。もう一ついいですか？Maybe so the Sendai framework is very forward-looking. So I'm curious, looking forward, what the city of Sendai is planning for the future. What else needs to be done? What are the plans there?
ちょっとお昼のセッションでもご紹介させていただいたんですけれども、仙台市の方では仙台防災枠組みの中間評価っていうことを地方自治体独自に去年実施させていただいたんですけれども、そちらでこれまでの防災減災の取り組みを、東北大学さんと一緒に評価して分析を行いました。で、その結果を見ますと、やはりこれまでの経験から地震津波対策っていうのは結構仙台市としてもしっかり取り組んでいるのかなというところが見えてきたんですけれども、最近やはり風水害温暖化の影響で、仙台市の方でもまだまだ経験をしたことがないような風水害の、被害っていうのも今後懸念されるっていうところがありますので、こちらの対策を、今後はしっかりと進めていきたいというところを考えています。はい、
Great, thank you. All right. My last question. I hope you're ready with your own. Dr. Arafat, we just heard from Gaetano his perspective on some of the challenges that he sees across the EU, across Europe. So I was wondering about your perspective Like, what are key challenges perhaps that you faced in Romania, and how did you deal with them?
Well, first of all, the challenges in Europe, the challenges in Romania are nearly the same. This is what we need to understand, is that there are no borders for the climate change and no borders for the impact. So when you are in the same region, you will have the same issues earlier or later. So though we don't have severe forest fires at this moment, we participate internationally. That means in other countries to help in fighting fires. We were in Greece several times. In France, we pre-position. But we are also aware that we will face this issue also in the future. We already had in March, which is very unusual, 2 forest fires that could be limited very fast. But I think that though now the forest fires are the main issue that we look at, as Gaetano said, these things will change in the future, and we will have other challenges besides the forest fires. We will have more and more floods. We will have more and more storms, extreme weather, and we need to prepare for this. So the issue is, if we are facing a risk now, we should be very careful not to neglect that there are other issues that are coming in the future and we need to prepare for. So in Romania, this is what we are doing. We are preparing even for what is now not an immediate emergency, knowing that it will become an emergency in the future, and we need to be prepared for. So we take all this, all of hazard approach, and we look at all the challenges that may face us. The other thing, what we need, and this is something which I feel needs to be said to all our colleagues when we are talking the whole world or in the regions, is that each one of us analyzes the things only from the perspective of their country. But we need to start looking at the regional and the world perspective. Climate change doesn't stop on borders. Like the pandemic didn't stop on the borders, it passed the borders. And we need to start working together more and more, because we need synergic policies, and we need to be working together on how to face the future challenges together. We will not be able to face them in separate manners. And though Romania, as I said, we have some particular issues which are not climate related, like earthquake, for example, but which we share this risk with many countries. And we know that Bucharest is one of the most earthquake impact-prone cities in the world, maybe, because of the buildings, the number of the buildings that need to be retrofitted. We have seen the impact that was in Turkey recently. And I think this must lead us to prepare better for all hazards and to be ready for them. Sometimes if you prepare for one, you are preparing for the other also, but sometimes you need also to take the specificities and to look, as I said, much beyond your borders.
Great, thanks so much. So I think maybe for me it's particularly striking. I think from an international perspective, maybe we look at Europe and think, perfect, everything is working. But I think there are a lot of lessons, and still you're all talking about challenges, and it's similar in Japan, where there's a lot of experience and lots of lessons learned over time. So please get your questions ready, ask. I think there's a lot maybe that we can also transfer in terms of knowledge to other regions, countries, and maybe you want to dig deeper into that, or any questions? Don't be shy. I see a hand there.
Thank you so much for the information and for sharing.
And please introduce yourself, sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry, Mercedes Tariverdi, I'm with the World Bank on health system resiliency and infrastructure, intersection of that. Earlier this morning, we heard about the great work that the city of Sendai had done in 2006 in preparation, and how it saved a lot of lives at schools and like in hospitals and on private partnerships. And what I wanted to ask the panelists is what has been the success stories on cross-sectoral works, how you incentivize, for example, energy sector to work with transport effectively, and more importantly with sectors such as health which traditionally has not been working with these infrastructure sectors. So any experiences that you can share and how we can implement it and supporting countries in other parts, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
I can say a few words to this, if you want. Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah.
I think it's
well,
to all of you.
There are things that we are doing in Romania related to the EU and to NATO. And we have what we call the 7 baselines of NATO for resilience, which are cross-sectoral. I will mention them. And we have the EU Resilience Directive also, which are complementary. So when we look at the 7 baselines, we are looking at continuity of governance, energy, communications, water and food, dealing with mass casualties, whatever is the reason for them, dealing with mass movement of population, and transportation. Now, our department is the one which is coordinating the work between the 7 working groups, which are cross-sectoral. They have people coming from the private sector, from the public sector, and so on. And now we started a project which is funded by the US, and this project foresees working together, having meetings every month, video conferencing and so on, and following up what is being done on each of the 7 baselines. But the first tabletop exercise, there will be for the next 5 years, every year, 2 tabletop exercises. The first tabletop exercise is taking place at the end of this month. It's looking at energy, but those who are thinking that the exercise will look only at energy, of course, they will be very much surprised that it will be looking at health, resilience, system. It will be looking at dealing with mass casualties. It will be looking at mass movements, because it will be looking at communications, because energy and lack of energy will impact all those sectors. So what we will try to do is to show all the sectors that when one of the 7 baselines is impacted, all the other sectors are impacted. And this we will be doing it during the exercise this month. And in September, we will have the second exercise, which will be on mass casualties, but we're not talking about bus accidents. We're talking about catastrophic mass casualties, like the pandemic, like several other situations that may happen. And then we will again link them to all the other sectors and see how they interact, where are the dependencies and where are the interdependencies. So this is a way that we are doing it to make our colleagues aware and also to teach them how to work together.
仙台市の方では、一つの成功事例と、ご紹介できるものとしては、震災からの復興の時に、津波被害を受けたエリアのところから、そこにお住まいだった方々を内陸部に移転する防災集団移転事業っていうのを進めたんですけれども、その後その人が住まなくなった土地の利活用というところで、市民や事業者の方に土地をお貸しして、民間の自由な発想でその土地を主体的に使っていただくっていう事業を進めています。でこちらは、今まさに進んでいる事業ですけれども、今現在で大規模な観光農園ですとか、あと市民の方々がアクティビティ、さまざまなアクティビティができるような公園などが出来上がっていまして、市内の方もそうですし、あとは観光客の方も訪れるような場所に今変わっていて、かなりそのにぎわいが創出されているという事例になっています。でこちらは津波被害も受けた場所ではあるので、やはり震災以降の運営もそこで行っていますので、震災のその経験のと教訓の伝承っていうところでも、その土地の活用がしっかりとできているのかなというところで、こちらを事例としてご紹介したいと思います。
Perhaps very briefly, I think from the Union Civil Protection Mechanism, which is where I work, in a nutshell, just to answer to your question on these linkages with other sector, I think we have been able to do it in the response phase. We had no choice. We had to do it because, you know, people were in need, and there was not a single country that had all the PPE, all the vaccines, so we did it. For COVID, by procuring vaccines, by procuring personal protection equipment, and other type of items. We did it in the Ukraine, in the war in Ukraine context, to, for example, procure generators, you know, tons of those power generators, where we have not really been able to still do much is on the preparedness side, and that is for several reasons, but it's because unfortunately we still work in silos. Let's face it. I mean, we still have different within the EU different mechanisms. You know, in the critical infrastructure, the civil protection, the energy, and also in the member states. There's a lot of sensitivities about making these linkages across sector, you know. So we are trying now, as you know, we are in the transition between the current commission, and then as of January 25, after the election that took place a couple of weeks ago, there will be a new commission. We are trying to put forward a vision which looks at a multi-sector emergency preparedness hub. This is the vision, but for now it's just a vision, because of course it will need a political blessing. Indeed, to also on the preparedness side, you know, when it comes to early warning, when it comes to plans, look at all this inter-sector aspect, which are critical. And on the prevention side, I think that is a little bit easier, because at least, you know, in passing the message, it's not easier. It's just, for us, we can just pass the message to the member states to look at, you know, when you invest these interdependencies, it's more, you know, a knowledge level. But from a EU coordination of preparedness, hopefully it's something that with the new commission we can materialize. Dr. Arafat, I think you know how difficult it is to get this through our political masters.
Maybe, June, I'll just add, I absolutely agree that there are many gaps because we all work in silos. And this is why also in the report we specifically, when we did our analysis of the exposure of different types of critical infrastructure assets, we looked at fire stations, police stations, schools, hospitals, roads, and power lines across in the context of different hazards and multiple hazards. And also the examples we bring forward are from different sectors. So you have an example of a criticality analysis of the roads network from Romania. You have analysis of, say, the forestry sector in Sweden, and how it needs to adapt to climate change adaptation. So we did try to also kind of cross to the other side and bring these examples from the different sectors closer also to the civil protection, disaster risk management community, and vice versa.
Great, thanks. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to make sure we hear at least one or two more questions. Maybe if I can ask you all to be to the point and quick, then we can fit in more. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So my question was partly answered. Pendo Maro, Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. So yeah, my question was partly answered, but I'll ask, you know, a slightly different question anyway to the speakers. Thank you for the presentations. So I was listening, and there was a mention of a technical assistance facility. I was just trying to clarify that. And that's only, if I understood well, focused on the European Union countries, or those countries, the members. Yes. So the question is, are there any other facilities also involved, or other people working in that space, and how are you coordinating with them? I mean, just on this facility here. And how do you integrate, you talked about climate, there was something about climate, building climate resilience. So how do you integrate this work with the actual work on climate change? Because there was a mention of climate change and climate resilience also as well. How do you integrate that with the process going on, for example, under the UNFCCC? Thank you.
Please go ahead, just self-select, but
very briefly. It's a standalone facility that we have with the GFTRR and the World Bank. I think automatically, by being in the GFDRR and World Bank network, we sort of can tap on other facilities and the knowledge that comes from there. But from the administrative point of view, is a standalone program, and it's also, as you said, open only to the 27 member states and the 10 other European countries which are part of the Union Civil Protection Mechanism. On your second question, if you were asking about the link with climate resilience, climate adaptation is one of the areas that for type of projects that you can submit under this facility.
Great.
Thank you. My name is Arti Bele. I'm a Senior Disaster Risk Management Specialist at the bank. I'm working in Africa, East and South. Well, excellent presentation, and thank you. Very informative, detail, and clearly, it seems like a lot of these questions have been sort of reviewed and frameworks developed and so forth. But what I would love to know I'm sure very briefly from here is, what would you pare it down to? Because it's a lot of countries in the developing world are looking to these standards, are looking to these frameworks and pathways. What would you pare it down in terms of lessons or pointers to them? Particularly because it's not the economics alone that really determines the decision making. It's very much the political economy of the institutional setup, and especially in very hard-hit countries where there are frequent disasters. It's the humanitarian and the international partners who are driving investment action. So how would we ensure that governments can use this information really? So what are those pointers that you would want them to think about so that they could take those right investments? Thank you. A little longer, I know, but maybe with just 1 or 2 points.
Maybe if that's okay, I'll jump in. So we have a small infographic. Some of them are available here. Of course, it is very simplified. Each country, city, community has to make their own decisions, and the decision-making processes, and you say the different elements, we call them building blocks, can be very different. But we try to also, as part of one of these reports, schematically show what are kind of the key steps in decision makings, and at which point the prioritization can come, and at which point there are some tools available, be it the triple dividend of resilience approach, be it simple cost-benefit analysis, or different types of performance-based indicators, etc. There are many ways. So we try to also, a little bit schematically at least, illustrate the overall decision-making process, and at which point maybe there are these kind of entry points for smarter decisions. And just to underline it, as it was in the video, information is power. Data, tools, examples, they can all help you. And we show also that even with limited data, you can already go towards a better decision. You don't have to just wait till we have the perfect data set, which you will never have. Yeah.
Great, thanks. All right, let's get one more question, but please introduce yourself and be brief, and same to the panelists.
Well, thank you. My name is Mohamed Taruri, and I'm from Somalia. I'm interested to know if there are cases of community-managed funds at the lower level where, for example, the state member is not capable of delivering response. For now, like in Somalia, it is just right now gaining the momentum of risk-informed decision-making and investment, and this is driven by the World Bank. So, but we have been there, and as has been discussed, the agenda was driven by the NGOs and the humanitarian, but it was like more of cross-cutting, not a priority before. So any examples, where are the communities in this framework? Thank you.
Role of communities.
Well, the communities are the first line of defense. So even in our system, where we have a national system fairly centralized as command and control and so on, it still goes down to the community, and the community is the one which is the basis of the system. It's the base of the system. So if the communities are not trained by us, we work with the communities directly. We train them, we prepare them, we develop them, we help them to be ready. Unless they are ready, our system will fail. And the last period, we are trying to explain to the communities and to the individuals that they are the first responders, not us. We call our firefighters the first responders, but in fact, they are even more first responders than our firefighters because they are the ones immediately near the disaster. So they need to know how to deal with this. We ran projects funded by the EU. We have a project which is how to empower the community to understand its role in dealing with earthquakes and with disasters. And we have several countries working on this. So the community, even in systems where the government systems are strong, without the community-based systems and the community involvement, those systems cannot deal with the whole situation. So we need the communities anyhow. And where the government is weak, the communities have to have the power to prepare themselves, because then it is even clearer that the government will not be able to help them and they have to help themselves.
Right. Thank you. We're over time, so I want to wrap up. Maybe if you have more questions, I'm going to volunteer the panelists, and please come up after the session and quiz them. But maybe we can finish with a quick fire round. I want to ask you any final thoughts, takeaways in 1 or 2 sentences. What should our audience take away from this? Who wants to start?
My final thought is, do not let the perfection be enemy of the good. There's no database that is too patchy, there's no budget that is too small to start doing something, to start bringing these issues to the political level. Just if you open one of the first of the 3 reports, you will see the hotspots of where hospitals are exposed to more than 2 or 3 high hazards, or same for fire stations, and that picture, I think, speaks more than several pages. So that's a great way to start a conversation with the Ministry of Planning or Ministry of Finance, or those one who holds the budget of this investment program.
I will share with you a proverb which helped me a lot in the years that I worked to do things. When you are sure of what you are doing, better asking for forgiveness rather than asking for permission to do things. So do them, and then if somebody criticizes you, say sorry, but I did it. You need to have the initiative. If you wait for permissions, you may always stay where you are and not do anything.
はい、皆さんもおっしゃっているように、やはり都市によって災害リスクですとか人口、予算規模も異なりますけれども、やはり行政だけでは防災減災というのはなかなか進められないというところもありますので、いろんな方々機関とぜひ連携をしていただいて、平時からそういうつながりを広く強くしていくことがやはりすごく大事だと思っています。で、そういったつながりがいかにできているかによって、災害が発生した時の被害の大きさですとか、その都市の回復力、被害からの回復力っていうのは大きく差が出てくるんだと思いますので、そういったところに一緒に取り組んでいければと思っています。はい。
Okay, and now we'll just bring it back a little bit to what June said at the beginning. I think there are many gaps in our public planning, decision making around disaster risk management. I think we can do better, and I would like to call you as members of the disaster risk management community to also contribute to smarter, to more focused, more prioritized investments, because as my colleague said at the Ignite, your decisions today can save a community tomorrow. So I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you.
That's it. Thanks so much for staying a little longer, and go ahead, ask more questions.